All right, on this week's episode of The Den, I sat down with Don Daly, owner of Nerds to Go, and we talked about IT and security and phishing and all the nefarious stuff that happens on the web and how you could be better protected. If you have a computer, if you work for home or own a business, then this episode's for you. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of The Den. I'm Eric Whitener, broker owner of the Knox Fox Real Estate Group, and today I have a special guest. His name is Don Daly. He's the owner of Nerds to Go. Good morning.
Morning.
So Nerds to Go. We'll jump right into it. Nerds to Go, like local business right here in the Farragut West Knox area.
Yep.
Tell us about it. What is Nerds to Go?
So Nerds to Go is IT solution provider for small business and residential customers. It actually didn't start out as Nerds to Go. It started out as something completely different.
Okay.
It started out as a company called Orci Technology Solutions. Orci, O-R-C-I, is Latin for clinical. So I'd spent 18 years in the healthcare space, IT, and what I saw was the small practices could not compete with the big guys because they didn't have IT.
Okay.
Literally didn't have IT. IT was usually somebody related to one of the physicians or something that would come in and moonlight. And so they couldn't do basic things like appointment reminders via text. And so when I left the corporate world in 2018, I started Orci to go solve that problem, help them plug that IT gap. What I realized was I'm reinventing the wheel. I'm doing this the hard way. Like everything from the name of the company to the logo to the colors to the services, the products we're going to use, all the go-to-market. And I took that and merged it in with the Nerds to Go franchise.
Okay.
So that's where Nerds to Go, that's how it got to Knoxville.
So Nerds to Go is a franchise.
It is a franchise.
But you come to that franchise bringing already an IT technical background.
I've been in IT since a teenager, basically.
Gotcha.
And the last 20, almost 5 years as a C-suite IT person. So a chief technology officer or a chief information officer.
Okay. So why do you choose specifically maybe Nerds to Go? And why, location wise, like what brought you to this neck of the woods?
So let's start with the second part first, and then we'll get the Nerds to Go. So what brought us here? We were in Atlanta, and we were tired of the rat race.
Yeah.
I mean, the traffic there it just ruined the quality of life. Even on weekends, just getting 8 miles down the road could take 45 minutes.
Oh man, and my experience with Atlanta is if you leave, like let's say you're coming back to Knoxville, if you leave literally like 20 minutes too late, it could cost you like an hour and a half.
It definitely did. So I was leaving the house at 5:36 in the morning, and not getting back until 7 or 8 that night, and that was to avoid the traffic. Yeah. Otherwise, you spend a third of your day driving to and from work. I had a 42-mile commute from Cumming down to Buckhead on 400, and 400 can move.
Yeah.
But it also sits still a lot too.
Crazy.
So we decided time to get out of Atlanta. Sue made a list, and I made a list of places we wanted to go. I'd been in Knoxville for school, and I put it on my list, and as luck would have it, we found an opportunity here. So we moved from Atlanta to here. I took a job with a company called Perfect Serve.
Okay.
Back in 2001, and I'm not going anywhere else. I love Knoxville.
Well, what is it you like about Knoxville?
So when we first got here, the first newscast you see starts off with like high school football, not who got shot, stabbed, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? It's a family town, and we're close enough to the beach. We got the mountains in our backyard. We got lakes and rivers around us. There's so much to do around here.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, well, I'm afraid that cat's out of the
I
bag,
know.
but there is a lot. There's a lot to do. I'll tell you, we've you know, like I guess like almost 2 years ago now, we bought a boat and just our like I tell people, I'm like, Knoxville has two seasons. It has boat season and football season.
Yep.
Obviously, there's more to Knoxville than those two things, but if you want to figure out where we're going on the weekend, it depends on the time of the
Right.
year.
Yep.
But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so that's
So that's how we got here,
okay.
right? And Perfect Serve, we sold that in 2018 to a private equity firm, and that was my. I was hoping that was going to be my exit from the corporate world permanently. Um, and what I realized was I'm not good at sitting around doing nothing. I have to be active, and so that's when I fired up Orchie and then bought into Nerds to Go. As luck would have it, a former COO that I worked with at Perfect Serve was down in Birmingham at a company called Procter U, and he was pursuing me to come help with that with his company down there. So I took it's supposed to be a short-term consulting job, turned into what should have been a one-year gig, actually turned into a 3-year gig. Um, so that's the corporate side, and then in 2022 I left it permanently. I had a GM running the day to day at Nerds to Go. And then at the end of 2022, I came into Nerds to Go on a full time basis and
Awesome.
assumed the reins.
Awesome. So I would say from your going from corporate to my own business, like in that realm, has that been a good change for you? You enjoy that, or are we
Oh,
still figuring out?
definitely. No, yeah, I mean, still figuring it out. I'm always going to be figuring stuff out. But what I don't miss is the cruft that comes with the corporate, the politics, the useless meetings. Um,
Yeah.
you know, not having to deal with the board, the PE firms,
Yeah.
the nonsense that goes with that, and being able to see a variety of things, right? So you get in the corporate world and you're kind of stuck in that little microcosm of that company,
Yeah.
and technologies and whatever exposure. But with Nerds to Go, we're in and out of so many different companies. Um, there's so much variability there, and it's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
I was at a customer a couple weeks ago to help them fix their laser cutter, and this cutter was bigger than a shipping container, right? And then I, you know, 2 hours later, be going into another customer that might have 3 employees and you know 3 computers and a printer.
Yeah.
So that that variability is fun.
I bet. I bet that's kind of I can kind of relate to that because we meet so many different people, so many different just interests and way that people live. Um, that part is kind of cool. I will tell you that not too many houses get me very excited anymore because I've seen so many houses, and as a guy, they all kind of like fit a certain. I mean, we just went and looked at a house yesterday. I was like, okay, this house reminds me of two I've already sold in the general floor plan. Like, so I almost kind of knew where stuff was. Um, but as far as like everybody's personal situation, always different. So
Yeah.
that and every deal is a little bit different. So that's always pretty cool. So okay, so Nerds to Go, let's dive into a little bit what you actually do because you mentioned you do corporate IT and you do stuff for residential people.
We do.
So I mean, that's a broad spectrum.
It is.
So let's start off a little bit with like the residential stuff. Okay. What kind of stuff do you do for the homeowner down the street?
So we help a lot of them upgrade their networks, um, both in the business world and in the personal world. We're dependent on the internet,
Yes.
right? And especially as people try to cut the cord, if if their network's not ready for that, their streaming isn't going to work well, right? So we do a lot of network upgrades, um, putting in a mesh network for the home cover the whole home with really good Wi-Fi. We do a lot of virus removal, believe it or not. You would think in this day and age people would have good antivirus.
But that's not necessarily the case.
They don't. In some cases, depending on what happens, there's getting a virus, and then there's getting scammed. And when I say getting scammed, I mean you let somebody onto your computer. So you had a pop-up that said, "Hey, this is Microsoft. Your computer's infected. Call this number." And you call this number, and it's not Microsoft. It's somebody overseas in India or the Philippines, and they say, "I need to get on your computer and fix it." And they get on your computer, and they put in a bunch of spyware, keyloggers, remote access software, etc. And the only way we can fix that is to reinstall the OS from the ground up. So we have to basically start over.
Gotta just wipe the whole computer.
Yep, because otherwise we can't guarantee that we got everything off, because some of these things are tucked away.
So okay, so people just doing their everyday search. I will tell you, there's one thing that aggravates me about the internet, and that is so whether I get the link through a newsletter that I read, I like to read the Morning Brew. They give a lot of links, or whether it's just like Google suggesting articles for me. When you click on something, and then it has all these pop-ups,
Yep.
right? And like I feel like that's always the rabbit hole. Like even trying to just get out of them sometimes. There's like that little video that's playing, and you're trying to find the X somewhere, and just by hitting it, next thing you know, it's opening up another page. But man, like we live in a day and age where there seems like there's always a scam out there trying to get a hold. Like I just got a letter the other day about, was it AT&T? Massive data breach. So like it's not just the big guys.
No, it's everybody. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
So they get a hold of your computer and they install this stuff. They have the ability then to, like, if you're logging into your bank account, they know all of the information that goes into that.
Yep. So they monetize this in a couple ways. One, they will charge typically like $700, and people pay it. People pay $700 to have Microsoft clean their computer.
Oh, so it's like straight up scam on the first part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The other thing they'll do is once they get access to a machine, they'll dwell, right? They'll just sit there and they'll watch what goes on. And then they'll realize, oh, Eric's a real estate agent. And Eric's about to have a deal close. And it's going to go to this person. So I'm going to go make an email that looks like Eric's. And I'm going to send them something to do a funds transfer. And so that person gets it. They look at it quickly. They don't realize there's a misspelling.
In the email.
And they're getting a little more crafty, and they're replacing the letters with a different character set, right? So the A looks like an A, but it's not an A from the Times New Roman character set. It's an A from something else.
Gotcha.
It's different. So they think it's the same thing. They go pay that. And guess what? That money's gone.
So that's a big thing that has happened in the last, 5, 7, 8 years, who knows how long. But wire fraud has been huge, and how that's exactly what they do. Is they'll spoof like the title company's email or the real estate agent's email, and they will tell the client like, "Hey, here's your wiring instructions," and so that person ends up wiring it to the completely wrong, and then it's just gone. Like at that point, once it goes into that account, like they move it, it's gone. That's why we tell everybody. We have special forms just for wire fraud, and it's not to accept any wire information, like via email or electronically. Like our title company now sends a secured email, and even then, the last several digits of the like account number you have to call in and get.
Right.
So it's like this double
Yeah,
verification
you always
type.
have two bands of communication. So,
Yeah.
like when we create a new user, we never give them the username and the password in the same email. And we never use email for both of them, not even two different emails. We would do an email and then we'll call, or we'll do an email and we'll text. So those two things are separated from each other. Because if they're in the same channel, even if they're separate messages in the same channel, and somebody's watching that channel, they got it, right?
And that it's crazy because I have even heard. So I have heard about people doing kind of like what you were just talking about, where they kind of get control of your computer, but they really got control of somebody's email, and they were sending emails directly from their email. Like people didn't even know
Yep.
that somebody else was utilizing their email, and they were sending emails and messing people up that way.
Yep. So I'm going to back up one step because you mentioned the wire fraud
Mm-hmm.
and the spoofing. So one thing to take care of there is to make sure that the domains are properly configured to prevent that. So if I was to send a message from the Knox Fox, your domain, from a server not authorized by you, it would get rejected. It would be known, right? Versus in the majority of cases, companies aren't properly configured, and I can easily send an email that looks like it came from their domain. So that automatically provides some level of trust, and it drops the guard on the recipient, right? If that is not properly configured, because then, oh, this came from so and so at the Knox Fox. I never heard of that person, but it's the Knox Fox, therefore I'm going to trust it, right?
So
So that's one thing that companies specifically need to do to protect themselves against that type of um, fraud.
So that way, when you get an email and it says Verizon, you don't have to necessarily double check that it's from Verizon, because it should be from Verizon server, or it shouldn't make it through.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
gotcha.
And that's on Verizon to configure their domain to tell the internet only let these servers send on our behalf.
Well, and you and I just more or less went through that for our email.
Right.
And yes, when you see this come through your email from the knoxfox.blog, that took even more work because it was a brand new email. But we went through these steps so that we could, so it would allow deliverability, and also to keep people from spoofing it and sending out fake emails from that look like they're from us.
Yep. And so Google, Yahoo, Outlook.com are kind of moving the needle on this, and they're starting to force sending domains to properly configure themselves. Because if you don't, they're not going to deliver those messages, right? And if you think about the number of people that use Gmail as their personal Gmail, how many companies are sending invoices to those? If they're not, that company saying that invoice isn't properly configured, that invoice isn't going to get delivered.
Yeah.
And so now, not only are you going to have a slowdown in your cash flow because I don't get the invoice, I can't pay it. But if you're doing any email marketing, that's going to slow down too. And there's going to, as that stuff starts to get rejected, people will fix their domains.
So it's always amazing to me how much it seems like, okay, so there's this group of people out there that put so much effort into like scamming people. It's amazing that, so for instance, we have services that we use for texting. That's a great marketing channel, or communication channel. We don't really use it for broadcasting, but but the rules, just like you're saying, like these rules are kind of going into place for email. There's been these rules that have gone into place for texting. However, I still manage to get at least once a day something about healthcare for realtors, that's a total scam, and something about, hey, this is a message from name your political candidate.
Yep.
And I'm like, how do they do this? Because I know the services we use, Like they're like, hey, like you got to follow this rule, this rule, this rule, this rule, and like I can't even put in my message, you know, I got to be careful not to put a link in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It could be a link to a property, and it might not get through. Um, but yet every one of the ones they send have a link in. I'm like, how does this work? Like, are these guys just so on it that they've figured out like every way to try to bypass something?
I, I I almost wonder if like the political campaigns are exempt from
They
the same rules we have to play by.
they might be, but man, that person who says that they have health care for realtors, I get that one all the time, and I know if there's any realtors listening to this, I know y'all get it too.
How about the guy that wants to buy my house? I
Uh,
can't get him to go away.
there there's plenty of those too.
Yeah.
I got one the other day that it was pretty funny actually because they never responded, and it was sort of along that same lines. Let's see. While I pull this up, the email situation is is crazy because people trust email. I
They do.
mean, they trust email a lot. Um, and so it's real easy when somebody already sends you something like that. Like if you get an email from Verizon and all of a sudden you get another email from Verizon, that's and I use that as an example because well, I mean I can go through my spam and I'll find stuff that says Verizon on it. We learned a while back not to open like if it seems suspicious and has a PDF, leave it alone. What could happen if you open a PDF that came from a nefarious actor?
So you're right in email. We trust it too much, um, and it is actually the soft underbelly for both people and businesses because depending on the stats you look at, but upwards of 90% of the um, breaches start with an email. An
Really?
email is the tip of the spear that starts the cascading process to ultimately what ends up being a security incident and may become a big B breach, meaning sensitive data has now leaked outside the organization. And it could be because I opened an attachment that had uh, macros or some code embedded in it. It could be because I clicked on a link. Um, I may just reply to it, and then they know there's somebody there, right? And then they start to pull strings. You mentioned the AT&T breach. So what was in that breach was metadata. Who called who texted who, not the content of the calls, not the content of the messages,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now, if I'm a bad actor and I have that data, I can start to see the people you interact with. And so then I can say, he's been interacting with Drew. I'm going to pretend to be Drew. Hey, Eric, this is Drew. I'm texting from another number. My phone got busted and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, man, sorry about that. And all of a sudden your guard is down. So they're going to use that data to like,
Oh, my car's broke down. I need
yeah,
50
I need
bucks.
money for a tow or something,
Here's
right?
my PayPal.
Yeah.
I,
So my point here is we have got to be hyper sensitive to every message we get and don't trust it. Even if you think it's coming from a trusted source, don't trust it.
yeah, it's crazy because okay, so I found that message like this one. Now, granted, I don't know this number, but it is an 865 number, right? It says, "Hey there, is this Eric?" Question mark. And so I just responded, and then I'm in a line of work where somebody, I mean, I've networked with enough people. They may have my number, you know. I say it is. It says, "This is Chelsea." Just had a question about your home at 1248 Loggerhead Lane. If you were able, so they know my name, they know my number, they know where I live. If you were able to get the right price, would you be open to listing it with our agent? Which is funny because they clearly don't know who Eric is,
Right.
right? So I said, maybe. Who's your agent? And then nothing. Now, it is weird. Even more I think about it, they have my phone number, they have my name, and they have my address. So I don't know if that was just scraped off of a list somewhere, if that's part of one of these potential data breaches. Is it somebody who just has a big company where they just try to get referrals for real estate agents? I have no
Yeah,
idea.
you don't know.
Um, I think it's weird that it didn't go anywhere. Like normally you get at least another text back, but
Yeah, I mean, what they might be doing is building up a list of people who had some positive intent, right? Because you said maybe, and so now they could be putting it in two different buckets and saying, hey, these are no good. These people said screw off, and then these people said, hey, yeah, there's some, just a
there's some intent there.
twinkle of positive intent that they can then go sell to some, realtor that's
Look,
hungry enough to pay for something like that.
it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Okay, so email, text messages, pop-ups. How what are some? And we haven't even talked about like Wi-Fi. I mean, you mentioned you help people with Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is also another spot where, if I'm not mistaken, where people can access things. Correct? That's another access point.
Yeah, so one of the things we see a lot is, and we see this both in businesses and homes, they have one Wi-Fi network, right? And everything is on that network. They have friends come over, they have people come over, they put them on their primary network. And so they're on the same network that your computer's on, that computer that you do banking is on. So now they're inside the house, if you will, right? And they have basically direct access to anything on the network. What they should be doing in both cases is setting up a guest network where your what are called IoT devices, Internet of Things. So these are your wireless security cameras, your thermostats, your switches, your smart appliances, all that stuff, your TVs should all go onto a guest network.
Okay.
So if they get compromised, they can't jump from that device to something that like your computer where you have sensitive data, right? So that's one of the key, and it's pretty low hanging fruit if you've got a decent Wi-Fi system. Most of them will support guest networks, and what the guest network does is it gives every device its own address and says the only thing you can do is talk to the internet. They can't even see devices on the guest network.
Gotcha.
They're protected from each other, right? And so that's the easiest way to kind of shore up your Wi-Fi.
Well, and I would say I know work from home is getting. Well, I mean, it's still very popular. It may be less popular than it was a few years ago, but it's still very popular. And if you're working from home, your computer is your access point to your work stuff. Um, you would want that very. You'd want that protected. You'd hate to. I would hate to be the source of causing a major data breach or for my company to get locked down because something got through my security system, which I think for the average person, it seems almost hard to believe. Like when I say it this way, like I go home, I'm gonna watch some Netflix, eat dinner, like live my little life. Why would anybody want to mess with me? Is I think my point. But they do.
They do. They they do it because it makes money. Going back to the scams where they're making $700 to clean your infected computer. That's not really infected. It's just pop-ups, right? People are paying it, and because people are paying it, it perpetuates this thing. It just keeps going. That's why the guidance is don't pay the ransomware. You know, they're trying to cut the legs out from underneath the ransomware companies by not paying it to dry up that revenue stream and make it not worthwhile for them. It's not working though.
Well, it's because some would say that those groups are funded by big pockets. Like some of that's intentional. We're getting deep now. We
Yeah,
could go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy
we
theories.
definitely can. But I mean, they will. No target is too small for them to mess with.
At, and the funny part about, okay, so like $700. I mean, for let's just say the average citizen. I mean, the average person out there, $700 would hurt, but not hurt so much that you couldn't do it, right?
Right.
Like that's almost kind of like a sweet spot versus, we hear about stories where they lock down a hospital and they want, millions and millions of dollars. And I think that's what most of us think about when we think about this stuff. We think about these, oh, they got AT&T, oh, they got Verizon, oh, they got, these big major companies. But the fact of the matter is, I'm amazed at how much that we see in our industry. I had a person, man, I had a person email just yesterday, not yesterday, last week. This email comes through and it says, hey, I'm the owner of a property for sale listed in North Carolina outside of Asheville. And it has the Zillow link and it says it's listed with an EXP agent, but I'm looking at other opportunities and I noticed you had this property for sale and was wondering if you were interested in a swap. Now, I looked the property up on, like, it was there. It was listed with an EXP agent. But that property was listed for twice as much as the property we had listed. And the whole thing, to me, like, old me might have been like, oh, well, I mean, maybe, this could be a great deal for my client, which in this circumstance, that client actually happens to be my mom. So I'm very vested in it, right?
Right.
And so I'm like looking through it and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, no, this makes no sense. You don't swap $400,000 plus property in Fairview, North Carolina for $200,000 property, excuse me, in Elizabeth, Roan Mountain, Tennessee.
Right.
Right. You also don't, you have an agent, you also don't like say, hey, I have an agent, but I'm not including my agent's contact info. I'm not copied my agent on this. Like and I was just like, oh, this is a total scam. Like this person wants me to respond. And here's where, like I started to play them, here's where it happens. They want you to do some sort of land swap. They want you to pass over a title, right? They just want to take your property. Like
Right.
that person could be, and we do get this when, like we will get inbound. I get this all the time with lead generation. People will register on my website and they'll say, hi, my name's Mike and I'm a very busy guy, but I want to buy a house in your area and I'm looking for a home at 600 to a million. I prefer you reach out to me on my WhatsApp. I probably get 1 to 2 of those a week. And it's like, man, I'm not reaching out to you on your
Right.
WhatsApp.
Right.
Like no, you emailed, like you went on, like you used an email to register, and we have phone numbers, right? Like messaging you on WhatsApp, no. So the whole, and they do this stuff. Well, one more example. Um, I got a message from somebody wanting to sell a piece of property. It was an email. It came through. Actually, it was a lead. It came through Realtor.com. So they literally went through Realtor.com and messaged.
Was there a form they filled out?
Yeah, it messaged us directly through there. So it seemed very legit. You got a lead through Realtor.com.
Right.
And it was like, hey, I want to sell this lot. And I want to sell it for, a roughly X amount of dollars, which when I looked the lot up was less than what they bought it for a few years ago. It also showed that this person actually lived in like Florida. So I responded with a question via email. and we went back and forth, but their responses were very strange. Um, so I took the next step and I looked up the owner's phone number and I called him, and he was like, it's weird. I just got a text message from another agent, like asking me about selling my lot. I was like, well, this is what's happening. This person's going through. So ultimately, they're trying to scam the system where you list that lot, it goes to close, they do a remote closing, and they try to do it with like their own fake note, or it's all
Mm-hmm.
fake. All they want is the money,
Right.
because the title company will wire the money, and then once it's wired, it's all
It's
gone.
over. Yeah.
And then you have this weird title issue. Somebody's out money, somebody's potentially out land. Um, Horrible deal. But it all starts with like these weird inquiries.
So one of the things that they're taking advantage of is we seem to be going faster and faster. We're spread thin. We're not taking the time to read and digest emails. We're skimming them, right? So we're missing these cues. And then if we do see the cue, like maybe it's kind of broken English, like maybe the sentence is syntactically correct, but they're using words that we don't use in our country or our region. It just a little fishy.
Yeah.
Like our spidey sense should start tingling. And then if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? You're not going to swap land for something that's twice as much as
Right.
what the asset you're going to give them is. So we a lot of us will just blow through that and dismiss it. And we have to slow down and pay attention to what's going on.
Well, they definitely get towards our fear of loss or opportunity to gain, right? Like those are people make decisions typically on those two. They're more apt on the fear of loss,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, hey, and one could say the opportunity to gain is in a lot of these. Like, hey, I have this. You could swap for this, but the fear of loss is look, that guy's offering me an extra like 200 grand, essentially. Like, I don't want to lose an opportunity for 200 grand, so you just start running through it.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, it's scary. I I've gotten to where, so I'm not going to say where I bank, but where I bank, um, I have debit cards, and I've had to replace both a business and a personal debit card that I've never used
Mm-hmm.
because they have. And when I say they, those people who sit in some dark room somewhere figuring out how to scam people have some sort of machine or something, and they've managed to hit numbers just luckily. And all of a sudden, I get this weird charge for $20.04 in Taiwan. I'm like, well, first of all, I don't buy anything in Taiwan. Second of all, I've never used the debit card, so like I have to go through all the hoops on that. And that's crazy. It's just crazy what's out there,
Yeah.
and you gotta be vigilant. Like I don't know, I probably check my stuff more than the average person.
So a lot of that, like that $20 charge, there'll be $3 charge, a $9 charge, and they'll kind of work it up because they'll hit these with these low charges. Nobody's looking at it,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they keep ramping it up, right? And they fly below the radar. And again, we're just moving too fast. We used to all spend time going over every bank statement every single month and balancing it to the penny. And I, I don't, I don't know people that do that anymore.
Well, you know me, and I will tell you, I am old school when it comes to that stuff.
It's a good thing.
Every week, I take a couple hours, and I check everything. Um, and just because I think the first time I had somebody hit me with some fraud was back when I lived in North Carolina. It would have been probably around 2001, and on my way to work, I would stop at this gas station and buy like I don't know coffee or something, right? I mean, I still do that. Um, and all of a sudden, I had like this extra $20 charge from that gas station. I was like, I didn't do that. Well, I reported it to my bank, and back then, like, they literally like went back to the to who owned that gas station. Well, it was the clerk. The clerk
Mhm.
had used my number and stuff. Like, they actually went to the date and time, and they saw the clerk ring it up. And I was like, man, that not only was that really bold but stupid. Like, you're on camera,
Right.
like, I mean, obviously that guy. I mean, I had to go through all this stuff where I had to do my signature a million times. I had to like, and I don't know what ended up happening to that guy, but that was back then. Now people do this stuff like you don't see them, don't know them.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
we're starting to see more and more restaurants bring the card reader to the table. They do that out of the country a lot, right? They never take your card from the table. And I like that because the longer that card's out of your sight, the more likely it is somebody can get that information off of it and sell it.
which is, that's an interesting. I'll be honest with you, I've never really thought about that. Um, it's kind of like with checks. I didn't realize. I mean, it makes total sense, but if you have somebody's,
Routing number and bank account. I mean, it's right there.
yeah,
It's in the clear.
you can go online. I mean, hopefully we're not giving people ideas, but
Uh,
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it.
yeah.
But I do know somebody who had um, I guess you could call her an ex, literally like pay stuff off with their account and routing. Like, they went and did ACH payments and hit them with like 20 grand worth of debits. Um,
Ouch.
yeah. So it is crazy how that information's out there. But what are you? These are how. This is how cash was easy. Cash was safer.
Yeah.
Uh,
And cash is going away,
It.
unfortunately.
All right. So we've talked. We kind of went down that rabbit hole. So how do you help people with this stuff? How do you solve their problems for all of this?
So one is just helping them understand the threat, the reality of it, and then in a lot of cases we start with the basics and we start building on top of that. So basics being never ever reuse the same password more than once, because once your email and password, if whatever that company that you use that password for, once they're breached, your username and password are out there and they're being sold.
Mm.
There's a great site called haveibeenpwned.com where you can go put your emails in and it will tell you what breaches you've been tied up in. And so that is a good service for us to see what's going on. But that same data is being sold on the dark web, and people are using that. And so if I know what password you've used, then I can do what's called credential stuffing, and I can try. And credential stuffing is a slow, methodical process of trying all your passwords against different accounts, right? And slow, methodical being they're gonna fly below the radar. Whereas if they were to just brute force it, and you had 1,000 bad password attempts against an account in a day,
It just locks it.
it locks it, right? And that's going to throw up flags. If they've got security people watching those bad password lockouts happening, it's going to throw up an IP address that they're going to go investigate, potentially block. Now, are they coming from their home or apartment with that IP address? No, they're bouncing around.
Yeah.
But at least they know that that IP address is suspicious, right? So never, ever, ever reuse those passwords. Make sure they're long and complex, and you should change them every 90 to 180 days.
That's a lot of work.
It is, and there's tools to help with that. A password manager helps with that. Some of them will actually, in a lot of cases, do the password changes for you. So it'll just change it out. It'll talk to Netflix on the back end, or it'll talk to eBay on the back end, change out your password, and you don't have to mess with it. And you never even care what the password is, because when you go to that site on your phone or your computer, your Mac, whatever, it will insert the password for you. And so that's one key tenet of protecting yourself. The second would be multi-factor authentication. And I know multi-factor authentication is kind of the scourge of usability. It's an extra step. It's something else I got to do to get logged in, but it is super important because the password side of the house is so weak, and we have such bad password hygiene. That second factor is super, super important, especially on your email. And the reason I say that is email is your gateway to pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you go to Netflix and you can't remember your password. What do? You click forgot password. What does it do?
Sends you an email.
Sends you an email. Now, if I'm in your email, then I'm getting that. Now, you mentioned earlier, you mentioned somebody being in somebody's email and they didn't even know it, right? So
Right.
what they do is they set up rules. And so when they get that password reset email into your inbox, that rule moves it to a folder you don't see that they're watching. So you don't even know that Netflix is getting a password reset, or your bank, or your credit card, or name the account. So they get it. They go change your password. So you've got to protect that email account. Like,
So you're saying not even it's not a matter of when you forget your password. It's a matter of somebody gets in your email and they go and they reset your password without you knowing it. They go in and so that they can log into the account. They've got your email. They know where it's going to come.
yep,
They make all this happen behind the scenes.
yep,
And next thing you know, somebody's. So let's just say Netflix. Maybe let's just say that's a bad example. Let's say it's your Amazon account.
right.
Much better example because now they have free reign to buy stuff, charge stuff. That
Or your credit card,
or your credit card.
or your bank.
That's yeah. That's definitely scary. So protecting your email at all costs is a big deal.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying just do two-factor authentication on the email. You really should do it on every single account, but it should be the sensitive accounts. Your email, any of your financial accounts, anything that is got personal data. So if you've got to log into your physician's EMR portal, protect it, because you don't want people in those things.
Right.
And that second factor, what's nice about it in a lot of cases is it can be an early warning signal for you. Because if I get a pop-up that says, hey, here's your code to log into your bank, I'm not logging in my bank.
Right.
Then you know somebody's
Trying to log in.
Yep. And then you can go look into what's going on, right? A lot of cases in your account, you can go look at where the login was coming from. And then that's something you can report to that company's security team.
So I've had two pieces of software that we just started using recently that they like instead of even like you don't even have a password. Like every time you go to log in, it emails you a link,
Mm-hmm.
and that is your way to access it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It is. Slack was one of the first ones to do that. It made it easy. I called it Magic Link, right? And
Magic Link, yeah.
yeah, and it makes it easy, but it also assumes that your email is secure.
Well, at some point, something has to be secure. I mean, I don't. I,
Yeah. So one thing to think about too, email inherently is not secure. Email is like a postcard, right? So when you mail something, it goes point to point to point to point to get there, right? Similar with email, right? And postcard not being in an envelope, whatever's on that postcard is visible to the world. Unless you encrypt that email, whatever's in that email is visible to the world, including your magic link, right? So if they can catch that email on its way to you, they basically have access to that link too. So there's some inherent insecurities in email, but there's also the insecurity of the inbox itself. That I mean, you've got to protect that. That's the one thing in your control. Control what you can control. Secure that email. Think about it this way: um, your house or your business, you've got a security system on it, right?
Yeah.
You lock your doors and your windows and make sure your garage doors are down. But for me to break into the house, what has to happen before I can break into your house? I know it's like a loaded question. It's like, oh man, there's so many places you can go with that. But I have to be on your property. I have to be at the window or at the door to get into your house.
Right.
To get into your email or any of your other accounts, I can be anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I don't have to physically be there. So the number of threat actors that can attack your digital accounts is so much higher than who's going to actually break into your house or your business.
So it's pretty wild because you see this also a lot on social media and stuff too, because people use social media. Just, I mean, I can't tell you how many times a week I get this person sending you a friend request, and I'm like, well, we're already friends.
Right.
Um, I don't necessarily know where those are ever going, like what they get from it. Um, but obviously there's money at the end of it somewhere. My business page gets hammered with spam. Hey, your account's been flagged. Here's a link, so that so you can dispute or fix or whatever. Um, but it's just crazy how much there is. So let's just say I goofed up. I've got something on my computer. Do I take it to you?
Take it to somebody you trust that can analyze it and ensure that however they disinfect it, clean it, it's clean. You're guaranteed not to have anybody continuing to dwell on that machine or have an infection.
So
And yes, we do provide that service.
okay. So you provide that service. I would say this is probably where backing up your computer is important. I mean, because if you have to start all over, you've lost everything.
Yep. So the one of the gut wrenching things for us is when somebody comes in and they've lost their data, and it could be because of hardware failure. It could be because they got hacked and it got encrypted, or somebody destroyed it, erased it, whatever. And the time to talk to them about backup is over,
Right.
right? Like that opportunity was missed, and now we have to be especially careful in how we do the backups, because what backups used to be are redemption from ransomware. So if you attacked my computer and you encrypted everything and held it for ransom and said, I will unlock your files if you give me money, if I have a backup, I would say, I'm not paying you. You're on your own. Go jump in a lake.
Yeah.
And I'll restore my data, right? Now what they're doing is they're ransoming it, they're locking it, but they're also exfiltrating it. So they're taking it so they can now blackmail you with that data. If you don't give me the money, I'm not going to unlock it, and I'm going to release this data out into the world. Disney, right now, you see Disney, they just released a terabyte of Slack channel stuff, right? So now they're using that as a way to threaten you after the fact, right? Now, where I'm going with this is that backup used to be our savior from this, right? They're also destroying the backups, right? So now we're back to I don't have a good backup. So you have to separate the backup from the device, not only physically. So it used to be you need an offsite backup. Well, why do I need offsite backup? Well, what if a tornado hits your house or a fire or a flood or something, and your backup and your computer are side by side, they're both destroyed. So
Right.
get it off site. Um, Now, it's not just get it off site. You have to make sure that you're protecting that backup so that if they get on your computer, they can't also destroy your backup, right? So the concept is called air gapping. So you air gap the two from each other. You separate them. And it's not just as easy as, you know, oh, I'm going to back it up to the cloud.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That computer's replicating to the cloud. So, and they can see that. And so if it doesn't automatically take that encryption and roll it up to those, to what you've got in the cloud, they're going to follow that string. So you have to kind of be very careful about how you set up the backups so that in that situation, you don't end up with both being destroyed.
So, all right. If let's just say, okay, let's say I'm a small business owner,
Mhm.
which I am. I work from home. I obviously use email. I do a lot of stuff on my cell phone. I have all this stuff. Um, if this is something that I'm remotely concerned about, what does that look like? If I come to you, I say, hey, look, okay, so this is what I do. How do I protect my stuff? Do you just like start going through all the pieces, or like how does that look?
So it's going to start with a conversation about risk, right? Because no two companies are the same. And now there's similarities within industries on the risks. Some of them are regulatory
Like medical?
compliance, right? Um, any company that collects personal financial data, they're going to have a separate set of risks. In a lot of cases, in medical, it's kind of both because they're both collecting credit cards, and they are they've got health information. So
Right.
now they've got PCI compliance, they got HIPAA compliance. So we start with a conversation about risks, and then we stack rank those risks by the most likely to happen and the most severe outcome, right? Because you're not going to tackle everything at once. And then we start working our way through those risks and how do we mitigate those with controls, like a technical control or a security control. That would be a technical control would be something like I would require your password to be 16 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols, right? So mixed symbols. And or it could be policy procedures, and we don't need a technical control, but just walking through that with the business owner, business leader, and then looking at current state. Do you have antivirus, right? Is it an enterprise grade antivirus or is it an off the shelf? I bought it at the office store antivirus. Do you have backups? Are you backing up your key data? Have you identified your key data?
Right.
Right? And just walking through all the things. Do you have a firewall? You'd be surprised how many businesses we go into, and they have a cable modem, and they think that's their firewall. It's like, that's not your firewall. You're leaving your front door wide open, well, unlocked.
Yeah.
At least, right? So we would walk through that, all those things with them, and figure out what's important to them, where are their gaps, and then how do we solve that and solve it in a way that doesn't break the bank.
So, and you do this for both. You do this for both home, business. Um, is there, is there a job too small, a job too big? Like where?
There probably should be a job too small. Um, you know, we do come to people in their home and in their businesses, and they come to us as well, and we do remote support. And you know, there are some where we roll somebody out there, and I look back at it and like, yeah, that hurts. You know, that we really need to be charging more for that because what we spent on that is not what we got back.
Yeah.
Right?
The the fun of being a business owner.
Yeah. So, yeah, there are some jobs too small. I mean, and we probably have a bunch a week where people will call us with a problem, and we'll say, you can buy a new printer for cheaper than what it's going to cost for us to send somebody out to fix it. Just our labor alone, I can tell you, right?
Yeah.
Is going to be more than a new printer or whatever, a new TV, you know.
That's worth at least having the conversation. I mean, somebody doesn't know. I know my printer here at the office. What was it? A year ago, maybe a little longer. It started acting goofy, and I took and got it repaired. And honestly, probably should have bought a new printer. Just from the simple fact that now I had spent half of what it cost to buy a new one to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
and I still had a used printer, and so now I still have other.
So, do you have an affinity to this printer?
No, I don't have an. If I was gonna say an affinity, it would be that it was the first printer that I bought for the business, and I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
Right, like it works. It does everything we need it to do. Um, it's just now let's see, we opened the doors in 2019, so it's a few years old. It's printed a lot of MLS sheets,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
What I didn't appreciate before Nerds to Go was how people get attached to their printers,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had a number of them where we've said it's not worth fixing this printer. This printer is 8 years old, and you can't even get new replacement parts for it anymore. We would have to go on eBay or some other secondhand market and either buy, if we can get just the part, or buy a whole printer and Frankenstein it and
Yeah.
pull apart. And we had one gentleman brought his printer in, and it was a bad print head, and this print head was going to be $900. And you can buy a new work group printer all in one for $700.
Yeah.
That's 10 times as capable.
Yeah.
And he didn't want any of it. He wanted his printer fixed. And we've seen that. And it's just bizarre to me.
That's probably what the deal was with me. Like I said, I was like, no, we can get this fixed, and we did. But like I said, I mean, so my printer, brand new, I think was $800. That repair, I know I spent probably close to $4. But since then, I mean, we've had various issues. Like they just wear out.
Yeah.
I mean, no different than a car. Used to be a car got 100,000 miles on it. It was definitely time to trade. So I think we're at that point. But yeah, I can understand the weird, attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like it's been the same printer since we opened the doors, and I know how it works. I know the sound it makes. Yeah,
Right.
that's an interesting. I never really thought about that. But
Yeah, and I will say printers these days are more disposable than they used to be. They don't make them like they used to. Some of the companies still make good stuff.
yeah,
Some of the long-held brands that we used to trust and were just the enterprise workhorses, they're not making those printers the same way they used to. They're just not as reliable. They don't last as long.
well, and you don't realize. I mean, and you want a decent printer because the cost, especially if you print. Now we've pretty much gone paperless. The most of the stuff that we print are going to be like MLS listings, like when we actually go out to show property, or if we're printing paperwork for a client to sign. But the majority of our stuff is all digital now, which has been helpful. But you don't realize the expense. Like you buy a bad printer, the cost in just toner can be crazy. And
Yep.
then if in a couple years, if all of a sudden, what's the thing the toner goes in? There's a name for it. But like right, mine says right now like the drum needs to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've already replaced the drum on it, right? Like it's printing just fine until that. Honestly, if until that thing all of a sudden just doesn't work, we're just gonna run it right now.
Probably did that just based on page count,
It
right?
probably did.
Right.
It probably did. And unfortunately, I can't get it to go away. Um, but I just live with it. It's okay.
I haven't done the math on like toner cost per pound or gallon compared to gas or other things, but I'm guessing it's probably one of the more expensive things we spend money
It
on.
it's it's crazy.
Yeah, it
It,
it is.
okay, so we've talked about a bit of stuff here from the. And I know we kind of mixed like residential and business because they're kind of the same thing. I mean, threats are threats.
Well, in a lot of small businesses, big businesses too, they blend together because people are working at home,
Working at home.
right?
So ideally, if you, the thing of it, okay, so it's kind of like insurance. I feel like we're talking about insurance here from the standpoint of like people hate to pay for insurance until they need it,
Right.
right? Like your homeowner's insurance and your car insurance is just a unnecessary bill until you have a natural disaster or a car accident, and then it's important. Because most of us don't think about our our internet hygiene, our computer, you know, protection until we have a problem.
Right.
I know. I mean, I've had to call you before where all of a sudden, uh, I think it was Terry Joe clicked on something, and then all of a sudden we just kept getting all these pop-ups, and you were able to tell us like, "Hey, just do this," and it got rid of that. But that could have been much more serious. Um, so, anyways, all that to be said, if somebody has questions or doesn't think or doesn't know, maybe they just need a checkup. You're located here in Farragut. I mean, you
Yep.
have a physical store.
We do. Yep.
They bring stuff in. How does it work? How does working with you work?
So they can certainly come in. We get fair number of people that come in and drop computers off on a daily basis, right? They can schedule time with us in the store. We got a little table up front we can sit at, or we can go back in the conference room and sit down. And a lot of times it starts with just a discussion, like what's going on. Let's kind of triage the situation, and then that will turn into, okay, here's what we recommend, and that conversation's not going to cost anything,
Right.
right? And in some cases, what we might recommend may or may not cost anything. It may just be, oh, you're getting these pop-ups because you allowed that site to send you pop-ups, so go turn off notifications for that site, right? Other cases, it may be, yeah, you've got a virus and we're going to have to reinstall your software. You let somebody on your computer. The only way we can guarantee that we flush them out completely is to reinstall the operating system and put your data back on. And they don't lose their data, by the way. When we do that, we pull the data off. We reinstall the OS and we put the data and the applications back on. So it's almost as if nothing changed. You just lose access to your computer for a couple days while we clean it.
Clean it. Yeah.
Or we can go to them. And in that case, that's not going to be a free. If we're rolling a technician out, an engineer out to help with something,
That makes sense. Yeah.
that's gonna cost some money, right?
Yeah.
Small businesses, we will do some free small business evaluations. We will go to them for that, and that's sitting down with the owner or the leaders and talking through what they perceive their challenges to be, where they need help, and then kind of looking at that broader risk picture.
So in today's world, everybody needs some sort of IT help. They need somebody to be looking over their setup and making sure they're up to date and things are working correctly. Would you
I
agree?
would say yes. Yeah. And they need somebody who's staying on top of the current threats, um, and knows how to mitigate those threats and protect against them, and do it in a way that doesn't break the bank and doesn't break the operations.
Right.
Because you can get overzealous in this space, and it quickly becomes unaffordable, or you put in so many hurdles that people can't get their job done,
Yeah.
right? And so, we have to balance the company being able to operate and make money, and with protecting them from these risks. Because I can just say, you know what, the internet's a threat. Let's unplug it.
Yeah.
And we're so dependent on it. Everything we do now is internet based.
Yeah. And I would say so. Like every time, I feel like every time we turn around, we talk. We're talking about a new threat, a new way, a new, somebody's doing something that they found a way to get around
Mm-hmm.
and to get into our space and try to ultimately it all leads back to money. Like they're trying to get money. But I can't like my job's real estate.
Right.
Drew over here, his job is to edit videos and take pictures
Make us look good,
and help
right?
with this podcast. Like we're it's almost just like that's the reason why we go to doctors. They go to doctors so that we get checkups and we do these things. I don't have time to stay up to date on the latest and greatest stuff going on in the supplement industry or all that stuff. I need some help in that realm, and that's basically what Nerds to Go sounds like offers.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
that's cool. What would you say right now is the number one biggest threat out there?
Your email. I mean, that is the tip of the spear. And if we can put some layers in protecting that email, so it's filtering on the front end, and the filtering's changed too, because the filtering used to be one and done. So your email would pass through your email filter on its way to your server, right? Once it's through that filter, it's done. It's gone. It's in your inbox. Now, with filtering, with crowdsourcing, meaning you mark something as spam, or you mark it as phishing,
Mm-hmm.
it will, and AI, it can now reach back into my inbox and say, this message you got 2 hours ago is bad, and it pulls it so I don't see it. And if I don't see it, I can't click on it. If I can't click on it, I can't get compromised.
Right.
Right? So that's one layer, is that filtering layer, but that filtering is no longer just that one and done. Another layer is training your people not to click on stuff, right? Turn on that spidey sense, pay attention, slow down, and don't click on or open attachments from unknown people, unexpected attachments.
Attachments get people all the time. Yes.
One thing that's helping a little bit is one of the things that hurts email deliverability, especially in marketing emails, is you're sending from the Knox Fox, but you're cross-linking in the email to another domain. That sends up little signals, right? You really should be linking back to the Knox Fox. That helps your email deliverability. So that's one of the things that can trigger. And so when you have an email coming from one domain and they've got this malicious link in it to another, that may trigger some spam filters to pull it out.
So really, I mean, so thinking about like two different things. One is protecting your email from a standpoint of, I don't want to get the bad email that looks like it's from a company I use, that wants to just drop, malware or whatever on my computer, right? I just don't want a virus. But the other aspect is maybe I do some sort of e-commerce or e-marketing, which we do,
Hmm.
and I want to make sure that twofold. I want to make sure my emails get delivered, especially in today's more heightened aware deal where Google and Yahoo and all they have these special rules now. So I want to make sure I got deliverability, but I also want to make sure that like somebody's not. I want to try to avoid having somebody spoof my email.
Right. You got to protect your brand because, like I said earlier, I could if you don't configure your outbound email correctly, I can pretend to be somebody from your company, send an email that looks like it came from the Knox Fox with an invoice attachment that makes you do something, right? A call to action that then makes you do something that sends money
Right.
somewhere else.
Well, that
And then that tarnishes your brand, right?
right.
And people don't realize that there's some culpability on the Knox Fox if you don't
Take these
protect
steps.
your protect your email server the right way. You don't configure it right.
So yeah. So I mean, even if you're a work from home type person, you're a small business owner that does stuff like out of their house, you may not think about it, but if you have an email list and you're sending out, bulk emails or marketing emails, um, that's a prime target. Especially if you're doing stuff where I would say you're taking payment. That even makes it even more so. I would think because people are used to
If they're used to clicking on a link and paying
paying.
you,
Yeah,
and then I can send a link somewhere else, and you think it's an invoice from you, but they're really paying me, and then you call them and say, hey, you haven't paid your invoice. Yeah, I did.
yeah. That's a biggest rule of thumb. I will say, okay, so and this one you talk about slowing down. This is hard for people, but if you get something you're like, hey, I'm not too sure about that, but it looks like it's from somebody you know, pick up the phone,
Yeah.
call them.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. We didn't even talk about AI today very much, but um, AI, they with very very little speech sample from you can pretty much replicate your speech. And so now these calls, you probably heard about them. Hey, Grandma, this is Johnny. I'm in jail and I need money. Can you. Now they can really sound like Johnny.
So call the number you know,
Call the number you
not
know.
the number it tells you
And,
to
and if
call.
somebody calls you and it starts to sound fishy, you might want to just hang up and call them back.
I'm all right. So the longer we go on this, the more I'm like not like trusting the world.
No, I mean, I won't scare the pants off of you, but don't trust the world. Just saying.
the yeah, the whole voice AI thing. I mean, I've heard plenty of examples now. Like there are, and I want to say they're already like putting rules in place to keep this from happening too much, but they're using like that AI voice stuff to like set appointments for. I mean, there's even real estate agents out there right now who are using just like I got that text message, um, that they're this AI is just calling people,
Mm-hmm.
and working to try to set appointments. That's in one aspect it seems cool, and another it's scary.
It is scary.
I
I mean,
mean,
in that case, they're trying to use it as a productivity hack, right? So I don't like making phone calls, cold calls. I don't think anybody does. But if I can have something do it for me, and I get time back in my day, and I get
oh,
I get some lead opportunity
I
out of that.
I understand why you do it. What's weird, what's crazy to me is that there's technology out there that will have a conversation with a homeowner to the point that they would potentially book an appointment for an agent to go out and help them sell their house. If it can do that, how hard would it be for it to be exactly what you're saying? Like, hey, you didn't make your payment, or we didn't get this, or your payment to the electric company didn't go through. I need 115 bucks from you. Right now, I'm gonna send you this link. It comes through. I mean, there's a million ways. If it can have that kind of conversation with you, it can have any conversation with you.
Yeah. So, a couple things to keep on top of the mind, whether it's an email, a text, a phone call, whatever. They play on your emotions, right? So, one, there's going to be some emotional tug there, right? Whether it's the fear of missing out, or it's a family member in distress. There's also going to be urgency, right?
Yeah, do it quick.
Do it quick. And so, those are two good signs. If either of those or both of those signals light up, then step back, slow down. If they called you, then and you think it's your daughter, then you hang up and call her, right? You do some other channel to try to figure out, is that really her? Because
Yeah,
we're getting to the point where we won't be able to trust what we hear or see unless you're sitting in front of me. If you're on a TV, on the computer, on a webcam, or we're talking on a phone, unfortunately, we're going to get to the point where we can't trust that.
Well, yeah. Before we started this, we were talking about some of the AI stuff I went to a class on, and like, there's that software out there, HeyGen, where with 2 minutes of like video recording, they can create a whole video. Like you just type in what you want your avatar to say, and it will literally make a video of the avatar saying that. It'll be you
So,
wearing the clothes you were wearing in the room you were in, but you can make it say whatever you want it to say.
so I came from telecom back in the late 80s, early 90s. And if we wanted to have text to speech mimic a human, it took minimum 40 hours of them reading very specific stuff,
Yeah.
right? For it, and it still wasn't that good,
Right.
right? 40 hours, and this is kind of like the old hard drives that were like the size of a refrigerator,
Yeah.
and held like 16 bytes or something, and everything's smaller and faster now, and it's just incredible that it can take a couple minutes of video and audio and replicate you.
Yes. It is pretty it's awesome and freaky all at the same time. Um so with that being said, again, like you always want to just always verify as much as you can, because um, this stuff's definitely coming. If it's already here. But with that being said, okay, so we've talked about uh, IT stuff, internet, Wi-Fi. What about like actual like hardware? So do you guys sell products? Do you sell computers? Do you do anything like that there?
We do, in a lot of cases, we give two options, because it's really hard for us to compete price wise with the like Amazons of the world and big box, especially like right now Prime Day is going on. So one, we can sell you the hardware and the service. So let's say you're buying a new computer, new laptop. We're happy to buy that and then move everything from your old computer over to that. Right,
That's
it's
awesome.
kind of all in price, kind of white glove service. Or you can go buy that computer and pay us to do that migration.
That's
Right?
cool.
So we just sell the service. Now, there's some things that we won't do that for. If we're going to go do a business network for somebody, we've learned that if we let them buy the equipment, 9 times out of 10, they don't buy all the right equipment, and we get there to do the install, and we're missing something or something's wrong. And then we've lost a day, they've lost a day, and they got to pay us to come back out. So in that case, when we're doing something big and complex like that, we're buying the hardware, right?
So that's a pretty awesome setup, considering you're able to, like, I could buy a new computer and you can just like make it to where I come, kind of like when you're swapping phones. I hate changing phones,
Mm-hmm.
but now they've kind of got it to where if you got your phone set up right the first time, you go swap out a phone, you hit a couple buttons, you let it sit for a little while, and
Right.
in your phone, everything's there.
Right.
Computers aren't necessarily that way. So you have a service where you can turn around and do that for them.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. What else? Is there anything else you offer that we haven't talked about?
So on the business side, we have when we install a network, the traditional way to do that is you sell the network equipment and the install as a project, as a package, right? And then the customer pays as needed for support down the road. So let's say they're having a problem with this printer staying on the network. They'd pay us to come out, and they pay by the hour for us to come out and troubleshoot that and figure that out.
Yeah.
We always give three choices in a network deployment. One is the traditional pay for it and then pay as you go. The second is you pay for it up front, and then we have something called network assurance. And network assurance is a fairly low cost. It starts as low as $75 a month and then goes up based on the size of the network. Unlimited network support, remote and on-site.
That's cool.
But even better is same-day replacement of failed hardware. So your firewall goes out. That's your front door to the world, right? And you can't go without a firewall. Your firewall goes out, we'd have to order a new one for you. And it used to be we'd get them in a couple days. Supply chain's whacked right now, and it could take 2 weeks. So you're without for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's
unless you have network assurance. And then we'll replace that firewall within 8 hours because we're going to stock them
Gotcha.
for that purpose, right? So we're going to make sure we have the backup hardware you need to stay in business and have that continuity.
That seems like a pretty awesome service because nobody wants to be. You don't want to be down for a day, 2 days, 3 days.
Right.
You want to be up as quick as possible because when you're down, I mean, let's face it, no computer, no money.
Right.
I mean, that's the way the world works today.
Yep. And from a budgeting perspective, you know what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same price.
Versus getting a surprise bill like, oh.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not buying a new firewall, right? In this case, you're not paying us by the hour to come out, troubleshoot it, fix it. And then let's say that thing's under warranty with the manufacturer. That's usually not an easy process. There's paperwork to do there. Somebody's going to do that. Either you're going to do it or you're going to pay me to do it for you.
Right.
Right. But with network assurance, we do all that for them, and they don't have to worry about it. It's covered, right?
I like it. It's network assurance, but it sounds like network insurance.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
It is in a way that we're it's kind of a cross between unlimited support, insurance, and warranty, right? In a way.
So, all right, I want to take a minute. We unless you got anything else you want to add, I want to talk about something a little more fun than getting hacked. And I'm a foodie. I like food. I like to eat.
Okay.
You've lived in this area now for how long?
22 years.
So it's safe to say you've probably eaten at a few restaurants. What are some of your what would you say some of your favorite places? Let's say lunch and or dinner.
So lunch, Colonel's Cafe.
Colonel's Cafe.
On I think it's Newcomb. It's in Bearden. You know where the Kroger in Bearden is?
Yeah.
And you got the Panera across from it?
Yeah.
If you're looking out from Panera toward Kingston Pike, it's to the left.
Okay.
It's on the other side of this big hedge. It's a small place. It's Greek, little cafe. The grouper is fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah. Same parking lot is a Mexican store with a little restaurant in there. It's called El Girasol.
I think I'm familiar with that one. I don't know if I've ever been in it, but yeah.
I've been going there since it was in the little piece of the building next to it.
That's like real authentic.
Yes.
That's cool.
Those are two of my favorites. Water and Wine.
Yeah.
Out on this side of town. Water and Wine definitely.
Good spot.
Yeah. How about you? What?
Oh man. So uh, I just had a fun outing. So my mom's been staying with us because she just had some minor surgery, a little hip replacement, um, and she's been doing really good. But we went out the other night and went to Kefi downtown.
I haven't been there yet.
Oh, I gotta say, Kefi does not disappoint. You definitely, I would say at least for Fridays and Saturdays, you definitely need to get reservations in advance. But we went and sat at the bar. It's a cool atmosphere. It's in the old city, um, and they've got an awesome drink menu. And their food's really good. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, we just ate appetizers. We had like 4 appetizers, so we could just try like different stuff.
Different things.
But I mean, they come out here with I don't remember the name of it. Everybody calls it the flaming cheese, but they come out there and they do all that good stuff. Um, it's a really cool place.
Is that on Gay Street or is it?
No, it's right next door. What's that? You can see it from James White, the two-story pizza
Oh,
Barley's.
yeah.
It's right next door to Barley's.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, that's pretty high on my list. Um,
No, I left Copper Cellar West off.
Copper Cellar's good
Yeah.
for sure.
Like when I get to choose, like my birthday, I get to choose where to go. It's usually going to be Copper Cellar.
So I missed the one that used to be on the strip.
I didn't like that one.
Nah,
For me, the one out west is better.
they're both definitely a good choice. I would say another one that Terry Joe and I like to go to is, well, Harvest. Harvest is a great restaurant. And I like restaurants that like change up their menu some.
Hmm.
And so they have more like seasonal stuff. Some, their chef will change things up. Which at Water and Wine they do the same thing. They change
Right.
stuff up. And then, man, if it's especially Monday, the three of us, since my mom's been with us, we've done this now a couple times. But can't go wrong with some Nama's sushi.
Hmm.
Especially on Mondays and Thursdays, I think are half price nights on rolls.
That's good to know.
That's some good stuff right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a Mexican restaurant that Terry Joe and I have to go try right behind Nama's out here off of Cedar Bluff. Doesn't look like much from the street.
Oh, it's the one right by the interstate there, right by
Yeah.
the ramp.
So I swear I've eaten there a few years back. I don't really remember much about it, but one of our friends just said they swear up and down it's the best Mexican restaurant in town.
So that one I hear a lot of people talk about. There's one in the corner of the I don't know the name. It's where Trader Joe's is.
Yeah, or where Toys R Us used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the very corner. It's tiny.
No, that's a good
Right.
restaurant.
And then the other one I hear a lot of people talk about is over on near downtown West by the movie theater. It's not downtown West. It's the road that tees into it. So you got the movie theater at the corner,
Yeah.
and then if you go south there, it's
Yeah.
same side of the
I-
street.
I've been to that one too.
And those three people like talk about a lot.
Let's see. I think we need to come up with some names here because Mexican restaurants, man, so Polancho's. Let's see. It's Polancho's, I think, is the one you're talking about.
The one on near downtown West.
Yes, Polancho's.
That
That
sounds
is
right.
good.
Yeah.
I definitely like that one. Shea, I don't know if I could say this. Shea Guevara restaurant. That's the one you're talking about by where
the
Toys R
corner.
Us, the
Yep.
bookstore.
Yep.
And yes, that's a very. I've been to that one a couple times too. Very good. I could probably do a podcast just on Mexican restaurants.
Probably could.
Because yeah, we could grade them. We could grade them on food and on margaritas. Like,
I, we got a Mexican restaurant right next to us at work, and they packed the parking lot.
yeah. Does that one have margaritas?
They do,
They do. Okay.
and they're not small.
So
We have a lot of friends who swear by their margaritas too.
there's one on Cedar Bluff. There's a Mexican restaurant, and the last time I was there, it's so funny. Probably the reason why I don't go there is because they don't do margaritas. Like they don't. It's a Mexican restaurant. It doesn't sell liquor. I was just like, I've never been to a Mexican restaurant that didn't do margaritas.
Where on Cedar Bluff is this one?
Kind of where. So used to be a drugstore. It's where Caesar's Pizza, Little Caesars,
So just before you get to
Dutchtown.
Catholic High, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It may not even be there anymore. It's been years since I've been there.
you might want to check your facts on that because we used to pregame there for Catholic games,
Buddy,
and and I don't know if I'm going to say this out loud, but we got road pops to take to the tailgate at the game.
well, I've
You know, COVID did that for us, right? We get it in the.
now it might have been. Well, no, it could have been pre-COVID before I went there. It's been years, but it was one of those moments where it's like, you don't sell alcohol, okay? Because that should be that like kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Mexican food, margaritas.
Yeah. Now we'll tell you, the Mexican restaurant, the first one I told you about, El Girasol. I think they have beer, but they don't do margaritas.
Gotcha.
It's more, just kind of like street food in a way.
So that would be a fun channel. That's something that Terry Jo and I would definitely enjoy because she, from being out west, loves her Mexican food. Her whole family loves Mexican food, and it's funny because that's definitely like I've seen that topic come up in Facebook groups. You want to get a conversation started, ask like, "What's the best Mexican restaurant in town?" And all of a sudden there'll just be 400 comments.
Yeah.
People are fighting in the comments over what's the best Mexican restaurant.
You want to send that conversation sideways? Ask if a taco's a sandwich.
Drew, is a taco a sandwich? No. That's funny. That's funny. All right, man. Hey, I think
We're there.
we're there. So what's the best way if somebody has like IT questions? What's the best way? Computer questions, whatever. They got questions about their tech. How do they get a hold of you?
So they can call us. We answer the phone. You're going to hear a little prompt at the beginning that says, "Hey, this might be recorded," but we do answer our phones Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with us. You can go to our website, fill out a form there, and we'll follow up on that.
Is that like nerdstogo.com?
Nerdstogo.com.
Okay.
Yep.
That's easy enough.
Yep. And those are the easiest ways.
I gotta say, like the name, obviously the name's funny, it's catchy, all that, but to have built-in like branding pieces that you don't even have to like pay for it. I mean, you do have to buy them, but you guys walk the 4th of July parade, literally handing out boxes of Nerds candy,
Right.
which is just hilarious.
I mean,
I wish that we had something that brand recognition thing we could just use like that.
Yeah, we just got lucky that those two worlds collide, and it's funny because nerds are like universally loved by people, and like you're giving them out to the kids, and the parents see them, they're like, "I want one of those."
Right.
Like, okay, you can have some.
It's pretty funny.
So, yeah.
Pretty funny. Well, man, I appreciate you being on the show
Thanks for
today.
having me.
And we'll have to do this again. Maybe when we have the round table of Mexican restaurants. That would I might have to go down that rabbit hole.
This could be fun. We could get a group, and we can all pick one, and then we go to it, and then we can have a little battle about which one was the best.
We could rate Mexican restaurants.
Right.
That,
The Mexican restaurants may not like that, but
I may have to up my exercise game.
Right.
Because all right, man. Well, hey, so if you have questions about real estate, if you have questions about the home buying process or the home selling process, the Knox Fox Real Estate Group, man, we're here. We help people in the residential real estate space. That's what we do. If you have questions about computers, about your IT, or anything electronic, work related, home related, whatever, Nerds to Go. That's where you want to go. They're locally owned. It's a franchise, so you have the support of a big franchise. That's where you want to go. Homes, computers, and IT. And I appreciate you watching the show, and look forward to catching you next week.